The hearing will come to order. Thank you all for coming. Here's sort of the order of the day. I'll give a brief opening statement along with Senator Whitehouse. It was the Russians who broke into the Democratic National Committee. How people were influenced by what happened, only they know and God knows, but I think every American should be concerned about what the Russians did. From my point of view, there's no doubt in my mind it was the Russians involved in all the things I just described. When one party's attacked, all of us should feel an attack. That when a foreign power interferes in our election, it doesn't matter who they targeted, we're all in the same boat. Raise your right hand, please. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give this subcommittee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Last year, the intelligence community conducted an exhaustive review of Russian interference into our presidential election process. The intelligence community assessment concluded first that President Putin directed an influence campaign to erode the faith and confidence of the American people in our presidential election process. Second, that he did so to demean Secretary Clinton. And third, that he sought to advantage Mr. Trump. If there has ever been a clarion call for vigilance and action against a threat to the very foundation of our democratic political system, this episode is it. I hope the American people recognize the severity of this threat and that we collectively counter it before it further erodes the fabric of our democracy. Microphone.
Thank you. We told him we felt like the vice president and others were entitled to know that the information that they were conveying to the American people wasn't true. And that created a compromise situation, a situation where the national security advisor essentially could be blackmailed by the Russians.
Which meant that he was vulnerable to manipulation by the Russians who, knowing what had actually taken place, could call up the national security advisor to the president and say, you got to do this for us or we're going to out you with all your folks and your career is done.
And again, our concern is that you have a very sensitive position like the national security advisor, and you don't want that person to be in a position where, again, the Russians have leverage over it.
I think the testimony we received from these witnesses and the presence of so many other of my colleagues is an indication of how we view the severity and gravity of the issue before us. You shared the Justice Department's concern about his communications with Russia, his apparent dishonesty about those communications, and his vulnerability to blackmail. Is that correct?
That's right.
Michael Flynn did not resign his position as National Security Advisor until February 13th. That is 18 days after you went over there with the formal warning.
The Russians have to be celebrating the success of what they set out to do with rather minimal resource expenditure. And the first objective was to sow discord and dissension, which they certainly did.